You want answers to finding, training, and retaining great team members, answers to increasing sales and how to maximize profit, marketing ideas that create incredible loyalty and drive repeat business. Well, today's guest is running and growing a thriving business. He delivers all the key solutions to your biggest restaurant challenges. Take notes, listen to the end, and then go rock your restaurant. Today, I'm excited to talk to Chad Offerdahl, the CEO of Big Biscuit. Chad, welcome to the show. You are the CEO of a large, fast-growing breakfast and lunch place, spectacular website. You got it all going on. We're going to talk about all today's restaurant challenges and what restaurant operators are struggling with. But let's open it up with something a little lighter. Do you have any crazy restaurant stories? I can't believe that happened. I can laugh about it now. It could have been a disaster, whatever. Anything like that just to get things rolling?
I think we know in this business, there's always something new. And the moment we think we've seen it all, we get proven wrong. But yeah, probably one of the earlier ones we had is our very first restaurant that we opened back in 2011. I obviously was running that one myself, and I got woken up by a phone call, which was not uncommon. We all know that's how it is in this business. But the phone call I got at 1 a.m. in the morning is from the fire chief of the city that the restaurant is in, and he's saying, "Sir, we have a gas smell coming from your restaurant. We've evacuated the entire strip center. We need you to get down here right now." So, of course, I fly out of bed. I'm flooring it to the restaurant. I get there. There's half a dozen fire trucks there. They're ready to break into the place. You can smell the gas from the parking lot. So I get the door open. They go in, and long story short, one of the grills, the pilot light had gone out, and it was still on for the gas, and it was a scary situation. Post the whole event, the fire chief was saying this was one of those where if somebody lit a cigarette outside, this building was going up. And it's just one of those things where it's a scary deal. Those things that you just don't expect. Had our hot water heater turned on. I mean, whatever it is. I mean, it was a scary situation. Probably one more from an operational focus that I am still scarred by to this day was what is now our busiest restaurant in the system. I was there for our opening week, and on the first Saturday, which for the breakfast business, Saturday and Sunday is a huge part of our sales. The first Saturday, we start putting some real volume through the kitchen, right? And all of a sudden, we're noticing, okay, the drain underneath the dishwasher is running slow. We're seeing it where it's going down, but it's going down really slowly. And it's slowly rising and rising with every load we run. And we are jam-packed. We're busy. We've got a line out the door. The dining room's full. We've got a full whack of staff. I mean, it is game time. And I just see it coming. It's like a car crash that, you can't look away. It's coming, like, okay, this is going to get bad. And so eventually it starts getting to where it's coming up out of that floor seat. And I just grabbed the squeegee. I put somebody else on Expo. I put, our management in place. And I sat there for the next 3 hours squeegeeing that water to where it stayed in the dish area so it could continue draining. I slowed down the dishwasher as much as we could, like just wash what is absolutely critical. But I remember to this day, like, man, we are getting our butts kicked. And I'm sitting here trying to keep water from going into the dining room with a squeegee until the plumber showed up. And thankfully, the plumber showed up, and there was a piece of plastic that had gotten down in there during construction that he was able to remove. But it was just one of those where, like, if I couldn't keep the squeegeeing from getting into the dining room, I was like, I'm going to have to shut down this restaurant. This isn't going to work. So thankfully, it ended up coming together, but it was an exciting first weekend, to say the least.
Well, Chad, that's an example of true leadership, leading by example. One, it was damage control, right? You jump in, it's all hands on deck. You direct people to do what needs to be done. The show must go on, but you're also leading by example. You're not the boss. You're not the figurehead. You're not someone in the back office making other people solve problems. It's like you're tackling stuff. And the guest, right? Maybe the guest was never aware that this was going on, and you made the show go on and you saved the night. So that's just an example of leadership. I'm glad you shared both those things, but I'm glad they both turned out well.
Well, thank you. Yeah, me too.
There's some challenges that restaurants are still struggling with: rising costs, shrinking profit margins, the ability to continue to offer value to guests While we're raising prices, you claim impossibly large portions, yet how do you still offer value?
I think that's a really good point is, I think in our industry, there's a big shift right now from it really was a lot of like menu innovation and uniqueness that was the trend for a while, but it really has shifted to value where our guests are looking for that. And so, yeah, there's a lot of different ways that we're combating that. First and foremost, are we taking good care of our training? Are we getting our staff trained appropriately to help drive the behaviors that will, improve our restaurant level economics? One thing we always want to be mindful of, and I preach this to the team constantly, is we're not going to do this shrinkflation crap. We will rise to the occasion. There's always going to be challenges when it comes to costs. So what can we do rather than just sit here and do the cost cutting, combat expenses, which, we have to be strategic on? It's how do we drive the sales? How do we get the sales per man hour up? How are we more efficient with our same resources? How can we get our sales up incrementally with the same costs? And, right now we're having great success with continuing to drive third-party sales, third-party delivery. Catering has been a huge opportunity for us to, again, drive incremental sales with the existing labor that we have, and then simplicity. You'll probably hear me say that 50 times as we talk, but we really continue to stay focused on simplicity. A simple menu, fewer SKUs with a more efficient kitchen model so that we have less waste, we have more operational efficiency, we can turn our tables faster, we can give a better experience to our guests. All of those things add up to better unit level economics. And those are really probably the high profile areas we're focused on.
Those all are really powerful ideas. And I'm really glad you mentioned each individual one because they can all be executed within a restaurant with focus. And now we're talking about a system. You clearly have a system in place. And we talked about, or you mentioned efficiencies and how you're getting, sales up per store location, per person. That begs the question and you mentioned training also. So we're going to cover all these bases. But what part does suggestive selling play in increasing check averages? And are your teams trained to recognize opportunities and suggest things they know the guests will enjoy and appreciate and raise check averages?
Yeah, training, I mean, that's a major focus for us right now for many reasons that we'll probably cover here today. But the better informed, the better trained our staff are, the more they enjoy their jobs, the better they can drive the behaviors that we need in the restaurant. So if they know what items are, most efficient for our kitchen to produce or have the best margin, or like you said, our guests enjoy the most, which is the most important, we're not just winning on that transaction. We're winning when they come back, that repeat guest. If they really enjoy their meal, if they really enjoy their experience, we talk a lot about lifetime value of a guest, right?
Yes.
It's in this industry, we have to fight for every sale. We don't have recurring revenue. We have to deliver every single time. And so it's not just win at that table and then move on. We need to provide an experience that's going to get them to not only return, but tell other people about us and get them to return. It's that, the overused cliche, squeezing a lemon. We're not focused on squeezing lemons. We're focused on getting more lemons. We want more people coming in the door and we want them to continue to come back. So, that's kind of the philosophy we focus on from our training standpoint, is empowering our staff from a sales perspective to know how to do those things, how to drive the behavior so that they feel fulfilled in their roles. They make more money. The restaurant level economics are better. Yeah, it's just a holistic experience.
You know that kids often determine where the family dines out, and they want the fun place. If you're a kid-friendly restaurant, Grub Lab is completely reinventing kids' menus. Imagine licensed NBA, NFL, and Hollywood brands in augmented reality that brings the characters to life right at the table, and collectible menus that rotate every few months, so there's always something new with your look and your logo. All just $99 a month. With Grub Lab, families stay longer and come back more often. It's a real loyalty driver. Go to grublab.co to get started. That's GRUBLAB.co. That is such a powerful point, the lifetime value of a customer. And that we're going to dive into marketing in a moment because this sort of leans on marketing, but so many restaurants out there are constantly spending money trying to get new guests in the door when they really should be focused on how do we get loyalty and repeat business and brand ambassadors, evangelists for our business that love us so much that not only do they come in more frequently, they're telling everyone, they're not paid to do this. They do it because they love the place and it's their place. I'm really glad you focused in on that. That was a really powerful point. Let's shift gears a little bit and let's move to the other big challenge because labor is also huge right now. And it's twofold because it's one, getting great people, and two, it's lowering turnover. And I'm sure you've got a system for that too. Let's talk about that, Chad.
Yeah, labor is, definitely one of the most challenging components in our industry. We have an inherently transient, workforce. And so how do we combat that? How do we increase our retention, lower our turnover, and for the people who are with us, make them really enjoy their job? And so that all comes down to how you show up as an employer. We believe in extreme ownership here at the Big Biscuit. We're big Jocko fans. And when it comes down to our team, we believe that we either have selected the wrong person or we haven't trained them enough. It's all on us. And so we're very much focused on that. We can control the training and we can control who we select, and so we put systems into place for both of those, starting with the selection standpoint. Are we putting the right information out there? Are we setting the right expectations? Do we have a really rock solid recruitment and interview process that helps us find the right people? And then moving forward into that, or an onboarding process. The experience with an employee, a team member, starts the moment they apply. How quickly are you responding? How are you communicating? What does the onboarding process look like? What expectations are being set? And then moving into the training program. Training. If you don't have a solid training program and you're throwing your team to the wolves, especially, going into, busy times and whatever else, you're just going to create frustration, because frustration is the result of unmet expectations. And, you as a business owner or a leader, restaurateur, have expectations of what your staff needs to do. And if your staff don't know those, you're going to be perpetually frustrated. And so a solid training program that's repeatable and easy to use cannot be understated. And especially one that is referenceable. Like for us, we have everything digitized where everybody's using the same thing and it's all digital and it's in one place and they can reference it and we keep them accountable to it on ongoing trainings, things like that. Another one as far as retention is for multi-location restaurant concepts, having consistency between locations, where if you have people who are working at multiple locations or transfer to another location, if they can't step in immediately and work that same position with the same set of procedures, you've got a breakdown. You've got to make sure that, your systems are your systems regardless of where your location is. And then probably the last thing I can think of to add right now is we're just in a time now where team members want to feel like their job is more than what their function is in the restaurant, meaning they want to feel like they're part of something bigger. So strong internal communication is one component of that. We really focus on internal newsletters, announcements, recognitions, things like that to share, anniversary milestones, wins for certain restaurants. We do a lot of internal competitions to, see who can drive the best metric of this or hit whatever milestone. Share wins. We have an internal company chat where the entire company can share wins and photos and things like that. And since we rolled that out, it's been wildly popular. Sometimes it's quite a lot in there, but our team loves it. And then in addition to that, community activations. We love being not just in our communities, but part of our communities, giving back, doing donations, volunteering. We do a ton of volunteer events that we get our teams activated on that they can sign up for and they love that. They love feeling like, hey, the Big Biscuit is more than what my job function is. It's more, I'm able to do something meaningful. And all of those things combined, add up to an experience that make people want to stay.
So many different best practices there. And it also with recruiting versus hiring. And I'm really glad you used that word because so many people, and I've said this so often, and I don't want to, turn this into a repeat thing, but so many restaurants are trying to hire versus recruit. And the difference is you're either getting someone else's C player or you're getting the best. And you're very intentional about your hiring, which is great. And I'm sure that you really vet these people strongly to make sure that they're going to fit into your culture and that they're going to be team players and that they're going to show initiative. All these things are important. And then we also talked about the cross training that's important because you want people to be fulfilled. And it's great that someone is a rock stellar performer in one position. And yes, you can transfer them to another store and they can fill in a pinch. But wouldn't it also be amazing if they could do another job besides their job that keeps things interesting? And, people showing initiative become future leaders in your organization. So you spoke to all of those things. And I think it's great that these things are happening in your stores. What about mentoring and shadowing? You talked about the importance of onboarding, which I absolutely believe in. But, do you assign someone, a new person with a buddy that kind of shows them the ropes and they work with different people to, dive into a new position, whether they're experienced or they're not experienced?
Yes, we do. And we do that at all levels through our organization. So from a server starting and having a dedicated trainer and also, one of the managers that's accountable for their training, all the way up to our executive team, where we have dedicated accountability and feedback. We believe in instant feedback. We don't do annual reviews. We don't do periodic reviews. Like we don't believe in that here. It is real time. We're going to tell you what we like you're doing, and we're going to tell you what we would like you to be doing better. It's just, that's how that's how you can have confidence. We get a lot of people from a lot of different companies and industries that come in and they're afraid to make mistakes. They're afraid to, take a risk, so to speak. And because they go, well, I don't know if I'm going to just, walk in one day and be fired or I'm going to be whatever else. Like, no, we have a culture of real time. I mean, and that is accountable all the way to my level of, I have an open door policy where, it is both for me and everybody else on our leadership team. You can access us and we access you and we do it in real time. In fact, one of our favorite things that we do that I love is we do this, it's called frontline feedback, where I get my executive team together and we do this every week. We talk to a dedicated person inside our restaurant and it's just the executive team, and whether it's a manager or a store level employee, whatever it is, and we have a dedicated conversation with them to not only talk about their experience with our company, but we want to hear their ideas. We want to get their feedback. We want them to be able to ask us questions. And this is in addition to us being in the restaurants and, interacting with our team. It's a dedicated time and it's really impactful. We've gotten a lot of great ideas from our teams during those dedicated times. And it's become culturally known where if you get the opportunity to do a frontline feedback, which we rotate, like we haven't done the same person twice, people get really excited. Like, oh man, I'm really looking forward to, I've got these ideas to share and I'm going to get, this dedicated time with the team. And, we just do a lot of things like that where we make sure we don't get lost in the minutia of growing an enterprise. It's at the end of the day, it's the basic things that drive the success of a restaurant. It's what's going on in the building. Everything else outside of that is secondary. How well are we taking care of our guests? Is our food quality? Are we delivering on our promises? Is our team happy? All those kind of things. And that's where, if we ever feel like we just are overloaded, which we know can happen all the time, it's let's step back. What are the basics? What are the basic things? And that comes down to just taking care of our staff. I've said this a million times and people are probably exhausted hearing me say it, but the best way we can take care of our guests is to take care of our team, because those are the people that are directly interacting with our guests every day. So if we can provide them an experience that they love coming to work, they enjoy what they do, they feel valued, they feel empowered, they are going to deliver on our brand's promises and give our guests the experience that we intend.
We were talking a minute ago about your guests being brand evangelists, but now you're talking about the team having such team spirit that they're sharing the love as well. And I love the fact that you encourage their ideas and asking them, how can we improve? And, some people are hesitant to speak up because they think it's a dumb idea, but I think it's tremendous to just, put yourself out there, give them the opportunity. And what satisfaction comes from you implementing and executing an idea that one team member, whether it's a dish person or it's a line cook or it's a leader, it doesn't matter. Think about how powerful it is. And when other team members see that and they see that, hey, I can contribute to something bigger than myself and I can be part of something and I can grow, there is a lot of magic happening there. So I'm really glad you mentioned that. Let's peel that back a little bit more, because you mentioned something that triggers the whole accountability. You mentioned the word accountability, and that is so important. And so many restaurants are wondering, why are my people unreliable? And sometimes their performance is spot on, and sometimes it isn't. And they call out sick or they show up late, whatever it is. And I have to ask, it's like expectations must be clear and accountability must happen. How do you make that work? Catering is a powerful profit center for your restaurant, but are you still juggling catering orders through email, phone calls, and scattered messages? Guess what? Your customers notice. One missed detail, one wrong delivery, and suddenly a new or even repeat customers ordering from your competitor. Rally Catering puts all your orders in one place, online, organized, and accurate. Your team know what to do. Your customers can order anytime. Say goodbye to chaos and say hello efficiency. Stop losing orders. Keep customers happy. Make catering simple with Rally Catering. Get a free demo at rallycatering.com/rockstars.
It's just strong communication. I'll reference back to that frontline feedback in answering this question. Is one of the biggest values of making sure that you stay grounded in what's happening inside the building is you'll start to see trends and consistency. So, there's a lot of things we've implemented, especially recently, that were a combination of observing it in the restaurant and hearing it consistently from multiple different people in our frontline feedbacks and going, okay, this is a trend. We're getting this same feedback from different levels of our team, from different restaurants over time. We're seeing it. Here's what we need to address. It gives us something to attack, and so for a while there, it was training where it was pretty much everybody we talked to is like, yeah, I didn't really know that's how we did that. Or I think our training could have been a little bit more hands-on. Or I think, whatever the different feedback was, it's like, okay, there's something that's not working here. And so we went back and fixed that. We addressed it. We got it where, that's how we, attack problems, is we're listening. We've got our ear to the ground. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of... Remind me of the question.
The question is literally about setting expectations, which I think you answered,
yes.
And then get accountability to those expectations. And there's a system to that. And I'm sure you have one. You want everyone to strive for excellence in everything they do, because the guest sees everything. This is the business of 1,000 details. So it starts with expectations, but somehow the rubber meets the road with accountability. So, share what you can.
Yeah. So from accountability, that's a fun one, because I think the easiest way you can do that is with clarity and transparency. So having it where everybody across the organization knows what we're looking at and knows what matters. So we have inside our company, basically an open book policy on the things we're looking at, of what are the store level sales, what are the COGS, what are the guest check averages, what are, sales by server by hour, all these different things we're looking at. That is accessible. That's not just upper management with, a piece of paper behind a desk, evaluating, all the way down to the store level. You can walk into one of our kitchens and our servers will see a sheet posted that shows all of the relevant data on them, where they rank, what their sales rank is, what their average DCA is, their discounts, how well they perform on contests, all these kind of things where they know, okay, this is what matters. This is what they're looking at. Okay. And even our cost of goods in the kitchen. Like that's not, some corporate secret that we're hiding from our staff. In fact, it's, guys, here's what we're paying attention to. And then in addition to that, how do we combat it? It's one thing to say, hey, this is what matters to me. It's another thing to say, here's how we can drive the right behavior. What are the behaviors that drive the results? How do we get, our waste down? How do we get our speed of, our table turns sped up? How do we drive our check average? All these kind of things so that the team knows. And that way it's not surprising, for them to get feedback and say, hey, we're going to reduce your section by one table because your GCA has fallen and we're going to give it to someone else who has gone up. It's very clear. And so that clarity and transparency, I think, is really the secret sauce of helping your staff buy in. You're putting your staff in business with you when they know what matters.
That's beautiful. And that speaks to sort of a old school concept called open book management, where you share a certain amount of financial information with the team to let them know that this business is all about, making money. It's about efficiency, and that the profit margins in this business are so low. And I remember a long time ago that people in one of my restaurants, when I first started, certain people were careless and plates would break and things would happen. And, the show must go on, of course. But then I realized that people thought that I was the owner of the restaurant. And every time I sold a $20 steak, Roger puts $20 in his pocket. He's getting rich and, we're doing all the work. And I suddenly just created this very simple, flip chart, and I got everyone together and I'm like, okay, here's that $20 steak. And the labor against that steak is like $4, and the cost of goods against that steak is $5. And you just broke a $7 plate, and that's $7 off and then the dumpster in the parking lot and the linens on the tables. And this is what we really make every time we sell something. And suddenly we empowered people, like you use that word, to really care and to really understand that it takes everyone to make this place work. And I think you spoke beautifully about that. So that's tremendous. Let's go a little deeper into finances, because you mentioned COGS, of course, and you mentioned, check averages, and you mentioned sales per hour. And it's amazing that you're literally comparing server sales. First, how do they feel about that when you first did that? I mean, some people are competitive and some people not so much. And it's like they're put on display for everyone else to see what the results are. Does that work really well? Does that turn anyone off? Like, tell us about that. That was a really interesting idea.
And initially and ongoing, it was very exciting. But, I keep using servers as the examples, but every position has applications in this data. For the servers who weren't performing, yeah, that wasn't quite as fun because it's now I'm on display, right? It's like, oh, my guest check average is $1.10 below my nearest, coworker here. But it's overall a positive thing, because what we see that's just so cool is the teams actually rally together. They start sharing ideas like, hey, when I'm at the table and I, see that they have a kid there, I offer to get, I not only offer to, the kids meeting to them, but I say, hey, do you want us to get a sticky biscuit out real quick so you guys can get something started for the kiddo? And that helps me get that, additional sale or whatever. They just start rallying together to help each other. The ones that are higher up on the list, if we have a cook who's performing better with, less waste, or a server who's hitting a higher GCA or whatever it is, like all of a sudden they become that source of knowledge. They become a natural leader themselves, which just makes them feel even better. So no, it's been really cool. And then, elevate that up to the manager level, because obviously managers have a ton of KPIs that they're responsible for. Having that clarity from store to store, market to market is really powerful, because we'll have managers. I mean, it is not a weekend goes by where I will see in our company chat or otherwise stores challenging each other on their own to say, hey, store so-and-so or multi-unit manager so-and-so, let's go up, let's run a contest this week. Whoever can sell the most donuts, the loser gets pied in the face, or, whatever it is. It's fun stuff like that, where they just get excited about doing these things that are going to make the business better anyway, that are going to help our guests anyway. So it's got just this fun energy, natural synergy to it that, now that we've gotten it where we have this open book policy, it's kind of, it just self-fulfills. We make it easy for everybody to do what they need to do.
you're raising everyone's game here, and it's a healthy competition, not just within the store, but store to store. I mean, the whole
Hmm.
thing is taking on sort of its own energy here. Have you noticed that, the underperformers sort of strive harder and other people help those other people to meet those certain levels of expectation versus, oh, I just don't fit. I'm going to leave because I don't want to be competitive. I think people by nature want to improve. And when they see other people doing well, I think they want to do well themselves.
It's fun to see, you know, the well performers step up and help the lower performers, and the lower performers seeking out the higher level performers. But then there's also the component where, not everybody is going to be like that. And they
Sure.
start to stand out really quickly, right? I gave the example earlier, if we have a server who is just far below, their table time, their table turns are a lot longer, their guest check average is lower, their online reviews, because we track online reviews by name. We look at all this data, and if they're not living up to what another higher performing server is, we make those adjustments. And it's a simple thing. There's no, it's nothing personal, but it creates a good conversation where our managers can say, hey, we're going to give so-and-so this extra table. We're going to pull one back on you. We're going to focus on your training so we can get your numbers up, and then we'll get you more tables, or we'll get you more shifts, or, whatever it is. Same with cooks. It's like, okay, if we keep seeing like, my gosh, on our griddle station, we're just having a ton of waste on Tuesdays and Wednesdays when so-and-so is on the grill, it's all right. We need to pull them off of that. We need to put them in a position they perform better and get them trained up and help them with that. And either they rise to that occasion, they embrace the training, they level up their game, or, it's at that point a natural evolution where we tend to separate ways, but it ends up being better for everybody because at least there's clear understanding. And back to your whole point here, there's clear expectations of, they already know what matters. We've been clear to them on what matters. We've gone out of our way to train them and even retrain them if they need to. And if they're still not living up to it, that makes it a very simple conversation of just, I don't know that you're going to be happy in this position. And so maybe we find you a different position, or we find a way to separate.
Fantastic. Let's talk about some other efficiencies store to store. And obviously, you've got some economies of scale. Do you have one single supplier? Do you work with multiple suppliers?
We have a few suppliers, but we, back to simplicity, we keep it as streamlined as possible. We're not only a corporate brand, but we also franchise. And so simplicity and consistency definitely matter. Economies of scale. We, as of, you and I talking right now, have 30 restaurants open. Here in about a week, we'll have 31 restaurants open. And so we're still emerging, but we do have economies of scale. We have a dedicated in-house supply chain management person, and he is, he adds a ton of value from that sense. We have a lot of things that we can offer in different areas, whether it's operations, IT, marketing, things like that allow us to do more with the same resources. And, but probably the easiest one from a restaurant perspective is supply chain, keeping things streamlined, having, someone or some people dedicated to your purchasing, to getting stronger contracts, standardizing systems. We really focus a lot on keeping our SKU count down, because that not only helps, make our operations simpler, but, reducing waste, giving us better control, helping drive efficiency, things like that.
Let's shift gears and talk about marketing. Do you have a specific marketing plan or strategy that's proven to work? And does that stay consistent year to year? Do you continue to roll out new marketing programs that work? Do you encourage the stores to come up with their own marketing ideas? Tell us about marketing.
Marketing is constantly shifting, but we've basically just continued to live by the same principles. We have, our mission, vision, and values as a company, our pillars of what matter to the Big Biscuit and what we stand for. That stays consistent. And then just the mindset of, I think I mentioned this earlier, we grow by being a part of the community, not just marketing to it. So humanizing our brand and our restaurant. We're real people who live in these communities, and we go and we volunteer and we roll up our sleeves. We show up to events, we bring food, we, surprise and delight, those kind of things that It's not just digital marketing. It's not just social media. It's not print, which all of those things have value, and we employ those different tactics absolutely. But the ones that I think really are the most memorable and impactful are those where we are in the community showing up in a way that is not as easy to show up as just simply placing an ad. And that philosophy has stayed true for us throughout our journey. And then, then kind of getting into more of the tactics and stuff, we spend a lot of time marketing externally in our industry, right? Of going out and trying to, get the attention, get the awareness, talk about our new items, whatever else. That's important, but also what's important is marketing to the people that are already interacting with your business, that are inside the building. I talk about this all the time with our marketing team of, we literally have millions of people inside of our buildings on an annual basis. We need to be communicating with them. We need to thank them. We need to keep them updated on what matters, and that has been so successful for us of doing that in-house marketing, whether it's, through an email or a phone number if they provide it to us, but also just in the building. How are we showing up on our table tents? How are we showing up on our window clings? Our menus, our menus are a marketing tool. And I think that's often overlooked is your menu is probably your most predominant marketing tool. It's powerful. We've got, like I said, we're about to be at 31 restaurants. How many people are looking at that menu on an annual basis? I mean, it's incredible. So we spend a lot of time being very intentional on making it where that menu accomplishes everything we need it to. It helps drive, sales on the things we want to sell. It helps our guests easily find the things they want, but also be able to discover different things, because breakfast is a very habit-driven, ritual-driven meal where people tend to come in and order the same thing or very similar things every time. But if we create a menu that's easy to read, that's, image rich and, fun to look at, we see people branching out, trying new things, getting that beverage, getting that shareable, whatever it is. And so we spend a lot of time on what we already have in addition to, trying to let people know who we are.
And I notice you've got a retail merchandise program. You're running a brand and a business, and that creates loyalty and that attracts awareness to the brand, and it brings people in, and really catchy slogans. It's like people buy this stuff. And gift cards, you're probably marketing those strongly as well. All additional profit centers to the restaurant. And you're ticking all the bases, Chad. I think that's tremendous. Let's finish with necessary technology. Let's start with AI, because that's the biggest thing on everyone's mind right now. And some restaurants are diving in full boat. Some people are really on the sidelines waiting to see what happens. And there's new ways you can use this stuff all the time. Are you guys using AI? And if so, how?
Yes, we are. And I definitely, I have a few mentors in the business that I'm blessed to have that are AI just wizards that they've employed for their brands. And I truly believe, even though it's a cliche and we probably all heard it, if you don't embrace AI, the brands that do are going to leave you in the dust. And I truly believe that. And Big Biscuit will not be left in the dust. So we utilize it in several different ways, and we're leaning into it more and more on a daily basis. But our mindset on AI is that of it is not meant to replace human interaction. We are a very human interaction heavy business. That's what we are. We are hospitality. It's the experience you have with another human being. So it's how can we, back to what you referenced earlier, how can we utilize AI from a operational efficiency, economy of scale standpoint? So we're employing AI when it comes to our review systems. We're employing AI when it comes to our accounting, bookkeeping, store level stuff, making it where our teams can do more with the same time, how they're accessing financials, how their speed of being able to enter in orders, utilizing AI for a lot of our marketing copy and things like that, training AI to talk like us to cut down on how much time somebody needs to interact with something. But at the store level, it's meant to enhance the experience with a person, not replace it. And if you get too focused on it, because it's easy to, I mean, there's a lot of ways we could, if we wanted to tomorrow, employ AI that would make things, more efficient in the restaurant, but it would take away from the experience. It's something we haven't done, and I'm not saying it's wrong for everybody, but it's wrong for the Big Biscuit is, putting a tablet on the table, and things like that. Like, that's just not us. The human interaction, the experience is really important. So there's absolutely the embrace of AI, but to the correct extent and for the correct uses to, help our guests if they're trying to find more information on us on our website or via our telephone. We're utilizing AI in different ways to help them get that information faster. But that's really our focus, not changing the experience.
I appreciate that answer very much. It should only enhance hospitality, never detract from it. And hospitality should never go away in our business. And you guys are doing all the right things. You just spoke the playbook for any successful restaurant. We covered all those bases. We talked about labor. We talked about margins. We talked about KPIs, team training, onboarding, competitive spirit, culture. We spoke all of that. So thanks for being a great guest on the show, Chad.
Thank you, Roger. It was a pleasure. I love talking restaurant. I love talking business.
That was the Restaurant Rockstars Podcast. Thank you so much to our audience for tuning in. Thanks to our sponsors this week. Can't wait to see you in the next episode. So stay well, stay tuned, and I will see you then. Work with some of the best minds in the business, in the restaurant space. Amy Oikel and I are putting together an operator mastermind. Operators just like you, solving today's most pressing operating challenges. We're going to be talking about labor, shrinking margins, big needle movers, leadership, accountability, and getting the most out of your operation. Meet twice a month, and we're going to talk all about the things that matter most for your business. You'll have a chance to talk about your personal challenges. You're going to hear from other operators with their best practices and solutions. We're going to give you immediately actionable ideas to improve your business. If you're interested, limited time, limited number, it's 15 people only, curated group. Go to restaurantrockstars.com for more information, and we hope to work with you.